Terry Eberhardt here, and welcome to the Growing the Future podcast, where we talk to folks who like to innovate, collaborate, and transform the ag industry. Thank you for joining us for season 5, episode 11. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, I would like to remind you to check out the Eberhardt family of companies online, starting with eberhardtfarms.com, where we grow food to feed the world in Langeberg, Saskatchewan. Suregrowth.ca, where we offer precision agronomy consulting services. Convergencegrowth.com, where we accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture. And eberhardtagsolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions for the future of your farm. Get notified about our new episodes by signing up for a newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca. My next guest is the kind of leader who gets energized by new ideas and challenges. For her, creating meaningful experience for students around agriculture is more of an extension of her passion than a job. She is an executive director for Ag in the Classroom Canada. And today we're going to talk about creating change through multiple layered experiences and what makes an experience memorable, inspiring our future workforce to consider careers in agriculture, and how do we further encourage agriculture industry in our youth? How can we hold other industry leaders responsible to educate our youth in supportive ways? And I'm very excited to welcome to the show Saras Shymko, and I'm very excited to be back on the podcast here after a bit of hiatus with my sidekick Holden. Can't let Dan have all the glory of the Grow in the Future podcast. And yeah, really excited to have Sara on the show today. This is a subject that I'm really passionate about. So welcome to the show, Sara.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm pleased to get to chat with you and Holden about the future of agriculture.
Yeah, that's awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit? We talked earlier. Tell us a little bit about your history, your background, and what you're doing now, and what Ag in the Classroom is all about.
Oh, right. So I grew up on a family farm, mixed farm near Jasmine, Saskatchewan. So growing up, we had grain and cattle and ducks and geese and chickens and pigs and a few cows that we milked. So I very much grew up on the type of farm that many people still think is the norm today and is not really the norm anymore because, of course, agriculture has evolved and has become modernized quite a bit. I'm not that young, I guess, anymore. So after I graduated from high school, I decided to continue my education at the U of S, and I studied agriculture economics. Worked for a few years in the agriculture industry and then really had a desire to travel. And so I lived in Australia for a year. I worked in Uganda and Eastern Africa for a couple of years. And that, I think, was a really transformative experience for me and was really where I understood just how important agriculture and food security really is. And that at the root of everything that we do on the farm, it's really about growing food. And came back from there, and after a few iterations, I found my way to agriculture in the classroom, and that was in 2006. And really simply, agriculture in the classroom is about connecting kids in agriculture and inspiring the young people of today to support modern agriculture and want to be a part of the future of agriculture.
That's amazing. So you've been doing this for quite a while now. Very passionate about it. I was looking on the website a bit, and Ag in the Classroom is kind of the national voice for agriculture education in the classroom. You know, reaching around 2 million or over 2 million kids a year between kindergarten and grade 12. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm the Executive Director for Agriculture in the Classroom Saskatchewan, and currently the Interim Executive Director for Agriculture in the Classroom Canada. So collectively, across the country, we are providing over 2 million student experiences a year. And as agriculture varies across the country, so do the agriculture education programs. And it's a really exciting time to be part of agriculture education because I can tell you that people have never cared more about food and have had so many questions, and the demand from teachers in wanting to learn more about food and have like agriculture education brought into their schools has skyrocketed, really even in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I think this is really important. I mean, I'm aware of ag in the classroom and the work that it does. I'm not sure that everyone is as aware as they should be of that. And yeah, I think in today's world, there's such a great disconnect from agriculture and its roots, and not only its roots, but where it is at today, and even in rural communities. And there's times where I've heard stories and I want to be kind of respectful about this, but where your kids go to school and they watch some food documentary on Netflix as an ag education, that sometimes may or may not be sharing what I would consider, an accurate or true reflection of agriculture. And so I think that, the work that ag in the classroom is doing is critically important, and we need to get this message out more to our teachers and to our students.
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. Like the disconnection between how food is grown, and students today and people today, it is real. Just a couple examples I can share is we were doing an activity once with some not really young kids. I would say the kids were about grade 5, 6, and we were planting seeds. And a child asked me for a seed to plant cheese. So I was like, oh, okay, where do I start with that? The seed to plant cheese. University students saying, well, I don't really care what happens to the farmers. I'm just going to buy my food at the grocery store. Well, I just sort of thought, okay, good luck with that. But that sort of speaks to why we need to be here. And the kids today, I mean, they are growing up to be the teachers. And so we have many of the teachers who are teaching today, they are also really disconnected from the farm. And so they're not, when they're bringing agriculture into the classroom because they need to teach about, whether it's through science or social studies, topics related to agriculture, they're going off the knowledge that they have, which is often not accurate, not very balanced, and certainly not current for the way agriculture happens today. And so when we want to look at the long game here, and it really is about working with educators, working with school divisions, with administration, working with the agriculture industry to say, what's the information that we need out there? What are the experiences that we want students to have so that they become more curious about agriculture, so that it really kind of shifts the way they think about modern agriculture, and they're not stuck in the view of the old McDonald's farm where everybody should have the 2 pigs and chickens and cows, in the way that I grew up on a farm 40 years ago, because things are really different today.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really interested to have, Holden's perspective on this podcast, of course, as a 16-year-old, farm kid going into grade 11. What is your kind of experience been in what you learn and see and about agriculture in the school and ag careers and those kind of things? Like what has your experience been?
So pretty much in our school, we basically, from my experience, I haven't really learned anything. And whether it's science, you learn about photosynthesis, and that's about as much as you learn about that. And it's difficult to say because, like, I kind of already know quite a bit just from living on the farm and experiencing it. But for other people, I know that, like, they wouldn't know the first thing about growing a plant or where to put it or the right thing to do to make it grow or anything like that. And we pretty much don't have anything so far that is teaching kids about agriculture in the older years. That is, I think there's a program in the uh, elementary school where they get to go to their gardens and grow their own plants, so that's good. But
Yeah, I was thinking when you first started, like you didn't learn anything in school was your first comment. I was kind of laughing about
Well,
that,
that too, but
about maybe about my agriculture, but I'm sure you probably kind of picked up a few things. Maybe you're like me, you weren't paying as much attention as you should. But I think generally this is, and it's not about you know singling out or pointing fingers, but in a general sense, it is interesting to see that there isn't a lot of focus around that. I think in any school, let alone particularly in our local hometown here. I mean, we're a community supported by agriculture and the potash mining industry, which is we're like 70, 80, 90% driven by agriculture. And I believe too, there's even our own children. We probably haven't done the best job of, they may live on the farm and work the fields and do all these different things, but what does agriculture really mean? I remember taking my daughter with me to a conference that I spoke at overseas, um, and she was kind of like, "Wow, I didn't really realize agriculture was such a big big deal." I'm like, "Well, it's yeah, like your products go all over the world at times. Essentially, what feeds and fuels the world in some way, form, or fashion." And I'm not saying that it's more important than other industries, but without agriculture and food, um, the world's going to be a pretty tough place to survive.
Yeah, I mean, Terry, if I could kind of add to that, I think when we look at some of the big global issues that are out in the world today that the world is trying to deal with, we have climate change, there's severe food shortages, food security issues, war, locally we've got labor shortages issues, there's trade disputes. Almost every one of those issues is interconnected somehow with agriculture. Sometimes agriculture really impacts what's happening, and sometimes agriculture is impacted by what's happening. And if we want to find solutions to these really complex problems that are out there, we absolutely need the young people today to want to be a part of that future, because it is really big and it is really important. And so, touching on what Holden said, where he didn't, doesn't really remember learning very much about agriculture, is very possible because it is not, there is no agriculture class in the curriculum. There are a lot of opportunities to bring agriculture in through various science and social studies modules, but that's really dependent on the teacher who says, okay, I'm going to learn about, we have to teach about plant growth. I'm going to use examples of crops grown today. Or we need to learn about soil, or we're learning about trade, we're going to look at agriculture trade. And so our approach at agriculture in the classroom has been on a very teacher, directly to the teacher basis, because that's the only way that we can ensure that it'll get into the classroom. But when we have 13,000 teachers in the province, I know that we are not reaching all of those teachers. We're probably reaching, maybe 2,000-3,000 of those teachers. So when you consider all of the students that are not, don't have agriculture brought into the classroom, partially because it's not in the curriculum, but the other reality is we are tapped out. We can't even meet the demands that we have right now for all of our resources and programs. We just don't have the resources to do that. So if every single grade 4 teacher and grade 10 teacher were to come to us and want to bring agriculture into the classroom, we would be hard pressed to meet that demand. And so if you take the perspective from you as a farmer, Terry, that is awesome that Holden knows about what's going on your farm. What about all the other kids in Langenburg? Who's going to work on your farm in the future? And I would take it a step further and say, the favorable policies that you need to make sound business decisions on your farm, well, the person writing that briefing note for PMRA, you know what? In 10 years, that could be the student who's sitting in the grade 11 classroom beside Holden, or in a Saskatoon school, or in a Toronto school. So an investment in agriculture education is like, it's an investment in the farm. And I think the whole agriculture industry needs to take a look and say, where are we going and what's going to happen if we aren't making sure that our young people today actually know what's going on in agriculture and how important it is and how interconnected it is to all of these big global issues that are happening out there.
Absolutely. Like this is one of the reasons I was passionate about having this conversation is we know that farmers are 2-3% of the population, right? And we still need the same amount of people. We also know that globally, in North America and most countries, we are going into a labor shortage that is only going to continue to get worse. And luckily, we have a lot of tools and technology in agriculture that will help with that. But either way, every industry, every business in the world is going to struggle to get people. And we are a business that traditionally has only worked with and hired people that came from the farm, and there just is nobody in that pool. And so I look like, are in that pool moving forward, and I look at this as a great opportunity because I believe that, you know, agriculture is an amazing place to be, and the types of jobs and careers that you can have on farms with the technology and the science and the innovation and just the culture of agriculture. There's a lot of people that I know that have come from outside of agriculture, from cities or different industries, and started to work in agriculture, and they're like, the culture is amazing, the people are amazing, the opportunity is amazing. And I think that there's great opportunity in bringing some kid from Toronto or some engineer from India or whatever it may be that has no idea about what we're doing, because we need that innovation and different ideas. And we live in a world now that, not everyone's out there just picking rocks or harrowing the field. There's a lot more going on. And so I think this is a great opportunity, but we need to tell that story and show, exactly what you guys are trying to do to bring those people in and have that opportunity for businesses moving forward.
Yeah, and I'd be really curious to hear from Holden. You're going, you're in high school, and some of your friends maybe have an idea what they want to do already, maybe some don't. But what are some of the motivating factors that you and your friends consider when you're thinking about the type of career that you want? Is it money? Is it travel? Is it opportunity to grow? Because I think agriculture can offer those. We also need to make sure, though, that we're speaking the language that, you know, high school students and teenagers can understand and want to listen to.
I know for some of my good friends personally, they are planning their life on what like they've always wanted to do, like what their dreams are. And me, I always imagine myself growing up and living on the farm and owning the farm. And so I'm planning on going to school for agriculture and food production. And then my other friend, he lives on a farm, but he doesn't really like farming that much. And he always dreamed of being a physicist. So he wants to go to school to be a physicist. And there are some people that want to go to school because, oh, this job, if I can become this, I'll get a lot of money. But I think for the most part, it's mostly people are just doing what they want. And maybe that'll change when they're older and it really comes down to it. But yeah,
I'm curious, Holden, do you see that? Do you think that most people or students kind of view careers in agriculture as, potentially just working on the farm, or doing farming, or all the other aspects that are involved with that, whether it's grain trading or marketing or communications, the science side of it with agronomy and those kind of things, or is it kind of just mainly related to, running a farm business or some kind of production business?
I think that when most people look at saying, oh, I'm going to go to school for agriculture, they think, oh, you're going to go to school, then you're just going to go sit in a tractor all day. But really, that's not it at all. There's so many different career paths that you could choose in agriculture. There's so many. You don't even have to live on a farm or be a farmer. You never even have to farm, combine, harvest ever in your life, and you could still be fully involved in agriculture.
I think if I could just jump in there, Terry, if that's okay. I would agree with you, because that's what we see all the time in schools when we're talking with high school students. Is by the time they're in grade, 9, 10, some of them have ideas about what they want to do. Many of them do, and they don't think about agriculture as being an exciting place to be. And that's why I believe it's really important that conversations about agriculture and agriculture education experiences start happening when students are really young, and taking an approach to build on those experiences and that knowledge year after year, so that by time they're starting to think about careers, they're like, oh man, like I want a career that makes a difference in the world, or I'm super interested in traveling, or I'm interested in discovery or science, or I really want a career where I'm around people all the time. Agriculture is front and center in their mind as a cool place to be. So it's almost that we need to just get a reputation of agriculture to change, right? And so it's, we have to have students thinking that agriculture is the place to be, not, ooh, that's just the place where if you just grow up on a farm, you just stay there, right? And so that is a bigger job than agriculture in the classroom alone can handle, but certainly we have a really, really important role in shifting that perception.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, also I think is important is, getting away from the kind of stereotypical views of agriculture and ag careers, and why, as you mentioned, creating that, kind of multi-year experience. Now, I know our school has been actually quite active, whether Holden remembers or not, but, with the retails in the area where we've brought all the kids out and shown them lots of different things. One of the reasons we're having this conversation is we're working with the school now. We have some land adjacent to the school where we're looking at setting up a community garden, and kind of doing it in conjunction with the school, and potentially, trying to collaborate with ag in the classroom. And a few years ago, the school was very open and gracious, where I brought in 3 or 4, speakers from the ag industry to talk about, like technology, like drones and AI and data. And we got to present to the entire school, the different classes, all in the auditorium. And it was really cool, because there was even teachers that came and were like, wow, like we didn't know there was all this crazy stuff going on in agriculture with technology and AI. And so, we are going to see more often in the future, even as farms get larger and progress, we're going to be hiring AI engineers and AI programmers, and people that got to figure out how to run the robots and all the technology on the farm. There's almost every career opportunity that you can think of in any other industry is developing now in agriculture too. um, and it's maybe a bit of our own bias, right? But there is so much opportunity to travel and see different things. I know you mentioned as well in your intro about spending time in Uganda, I think it was, in Africa. And I had the opportunity of going on a food study tour in Ethiopia with the Canadian Food Grains Bank, and when you see the agriculture challenges, and where food is a method of survival, not the Starbucks or McDonald's run. It also changes your perspective of the impact and the importance of agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. I think the careers in agriculture is just, it's such an important part of what agriculture in the classroom does. And the approach to that, it's about working not just with teachers, but also guidance counselors in schools and school divisions, and looking at the resources that we can provide, and those experiences, whether that's career fairs, where we have a program called the Think Ag Expo that we do at Agribition, where over 500 students come, and there's 15-minute stations, and they get introduced on a snapshot to some of these different types of careers out there. And they're amazed by, the drone simulation activities that they'll do. Just, it surprises me that in today's world, knowing how much technology is involved in agriculture, there's still so many people who don't think that it's a part of agriculture. We were at an event in an elementary school, and one of the questions we had asked, I had about 8 different farmers there from different areas, and one question I said was, how many do you think that these farmers use a computer to do their job? Well, it was not even half of the students that thought so. And that's mind boggling when you look at, try and do your job without a computer, or the amount of technology that exists on your farm. And so there's that disconnect. It is way more than just students thinking, oh, chocolate milk comes from a brown cow. It isn't about that. Like that, it is so far beyond that. And that if we want their agriculture in Saskatchewan, in Canada, to continue to innovate and be at the forefront, we need people to be doing that research, to be, we need the best and the brightest minds as a part of our agriculture future. We also need society to embrace it and not be scared of it. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at the resistance to genetic engineering, or fertilizer use, and there's so much fear. And I think there's fear in society today about things that people don't understand. And then when there's that fear, there's movements that happen from people who have really loud voices and don't know a whole lot, and that can have some really negative repercussions for the agriculture industry. I mean, I think right now we're facing, a few situations, in terms of policies coming down that are going to make it hard for farmers to be as sustainable as they want to be.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it kind of comes back to that saying, if you're not telling your story, somebody else is. And I used to be probably in that camp as a farmer that, hey, I just want to do my job and I love what I do, and just let me go out, in the field or whatever, and somebody else can worry about all that stuff. But I think, you know, that mentality and that mindset is really starting to hurt us now, because we haven't told a good story. Other people are telling those stories, and they may not be accurate or true, or a positive reflection of what we're doing. And these are all the repercussions, that we can have. And so we need to start doing a better job of that. And I think, the potential start or beginning of that is in the classroom and is with the younger generation. And so, you alluded to, at the start of, like, how do we create these kind of multiple layers of touch points? How do we start that? How do we plant that seed and foster it as it grows? Because you just can't plant the seed and then walk away. And how do you create, experiences that kids remember? You guys had some good discussion a little bit about that before we actually started the podcast, about, like, how do you create an experience in the classroom or with students that's different than the other things that they normally learn, and that sticks and remembers, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I know, Holden, curious to hear from you, as a young person, what makes a memorable learning experience for you? What do you remember, as you're, 16 years old now? What can you remember from, your younger years that maybe was like, wow, that was amazing, or that sort of changed the way you thought about something?
I think what makes a learning experience memorable for me is either when something like really, really funny happens, or if it's something I'm really interested in. Like, for example, when my dad was talking about how they had some farmers come out to our school years ago, I remember when they showed us what a combine was, and they brought out the combine and they like harvested right in front of us and drove along. And like I see combines every year, right? So I knew what it was. But I know lots of the people in my class were looking at that being like, what even is that? I'm like, well, that's the thing that my dad drives. And they they kept on asking me questions about it for like the next few weeks. I was like, just search it up if you're that curious. Like, I don't have all the answers, but I think for them, they remembered that because it was something they'd never seen. It was just like out of this world, and it was just so new, and it was big too and loud, and that was just something that they really remembered.
Oh, I love that example, Holden, because uh, the fact that that your friends were curious and continue to ask you questions for weeks after this happened, like that's the memorable experiences that we are trying to create. And if you can imagine in, a Saskatoon school, those students would have had even less exposure to something like a farm or a combine. And so if we can create, in grade 1, grade 3, grade 5, different experiences. So maybe, they're growing a garden in the classroom. Maybe they go out and visit a farm. Maybe they see harvest happening. They're perhaps involved in a food farm where they're out there growing and coming back. Maybe they go to the College of Agriculture and Vet Med and learn about some of the animal care, practices by seeing, the fistulated cow, for example. All of those experiences, by time these students, are in high school, they have some confidence in what's happening in agriculture. And so that's why, like, I love hearing those stories. And I think, in fact, I've maybe thought that, wow, maybe what I need to do now is actually do some polls with different students to find out what have been the most memorable learning experiences for the students. Because at the end of the day, if we want to create change and we want to inspire kids to be curious, and that curiosity will grow, we need the right experiences, and then we need the right people involved to create those experiences. And it can't be just a one and done approach. And driving a combine, I think is probably more, or maybe not driving the combine, but seeing the combine is probably more impactful than reading something in a book, right? Because there's a little bit more of that experiential aspect to it.
I like when you said that you don't need a one and done experience, because that for me is a great example of when you get speakers to come in and talk in front of like the whole school. Because for me personally, when somebody is up on stage and they're talking about farming and how they harvest and how they seed and how they do this to their plants to make them grow and they do this to the weeds to make them not grow, that's just boring to me. And I usually don't pay attention, but for me, the first time I ever went to the Ag in Motion in Saskatoon, and I got to see all the different equipment and new technology and all the booths and stuff, and getting to see like everything right in front of me instead of somebody just telling about it on stage while I'm talking to my friend. It's just way better, and I missed it this year, which I was really bummed about. But I think it would be a cool thing to do if you could almost do something like that, but bring it to a school. Like if you could bring in like even models of equipment, or examples like what we do at our field days is we had put a growth regulator on our plants, and then dad picked the plants that had the growth regulator and didn't, and then he showed it to everybody, and you got to like hold the plant and see why this one's this tall and this one's this tall. And it was just really cool, and for me that's what makes me want to learn more, is when I can see it right in front of me, and when I can hold it in my hand, or when I can actually examine it instead of just having to hear it and it just goes in and out the other ears. So
Yeah, Holden, I think that would be probably a similar viewpoint that most students would have. I read a quote once that you retain 10% of what you hear, 20% of what you read, and 90% of what you, I think, experience and teach others. And your story just reminded me of our food farm program. So our food farm program, it varies every year, but between 9 to 13 locations around the province, and it's a great community program. We partner with the Ministry of Agriculture and a lot of local partners, and students come in grade 3 and they're involved in planting. And there's always plots that have, technology used, so fertilizer, pesticides applied, and then plots that don't have them. Then the students, when they're in grade 4, they come back and we have a conversation. Which plot looks better, which plot's going to yield more, and that really is a great way to open the door also to the conversations about what is environmental stewardship. And so yes, there is even at the grade 4 level, like yes, you do spray, you put down fertilizer, and you do put down pesticides or insecticides or whatever may be needed, and there is some environmental impact to that too. But if your yields are triple what the other yields were, you've also been able to utilize your land more effectively. And the amount of land in the world is not growing for food production, that's for sure. So what those experiences do, and similar to the one that you shared, is it's an opportunity for kids to ask questions, have discussions. We don't have all the right answers. And everybody in agriculture knows that we're continuing to evolve because we ask questions and because we're looking to solve problems. And those are really the kinds of conversations that we want to create and foster in classrooms, all the way from when the kids are little to discussing, maybe how do we waste less food, or what's happening with this plant? Why did one seed sprout and why did the other seed not sprout? To the grade 12 students, where they're doing, DNA extractions, and they're doing gel electrophoresis. Can't even pronounce that. But it's about the experiences, the curiosity, and that further and deeper learning, because information is in abundance. That's not the problem. The problem is the experiences that engage and excite people to want to learn more and to be interested in having these conversations.
That's really interesting. I'm just, my wheels are turning a lot just listening to the conversation and thinking about those things, and and thinking about the ways that we can engage students in a different way from what they see traditionally 90% of the time in their classrooms and learning, and what opportunities we can do to do that. And that's one of our hopes and goals with this community garden or food farm that we want to create, and have students experience for themselves what different methods of production look like, and what the food looks like and maybe even tastes like, and learn from their own experience versus from what someone has told them, or what they hear on the internet or watch on YouTube or Netflix or Snapchat or whatever it is these days, TikTok. um, but yeah, I think this is critically important, as we discussed. And so how do we help? How does the industry um, do more, in a sense? How do we do a better job of connecting to our youth, and telling this story, and what we do as farmers, engaging? I know there's some other farmers in a peer group that we're in, that brings the school out to their farm, and the kids get to walk around the equipment, and they get to talk about all kinds of different things. And it's something that I think that we all need to think about how we can do a little bit, and if we all help a little bit, it can make a big difference. But what are some of what should we be doing? What should we be thinking about?
Oh, well, I'm happy that you asked that question, Terry. There is a tremendous opportunity for farmers and others in agriculture to get involved, both by working with agriculture in the classroom, but also on their own. So, for example, the idea of opening up your farm to host classrooms to come out for a farm tour. Bus subsidies or busing costs are hugely prohibitive to schools. Often a school will get, class trip for a certain number of classes in the school. So this year, Ag in the Classroom was able to offer a bus subsidy, and we sent 35 classrooms to farms. So that's fantastic. And the challenge that we faced was in Regina, Saskatoon, Yorkton, Swift Current, some of the bigger centers. We didn't have enough farms in those catchment areas to be able to send the classrooms to. So being able to open up your farm for a visit, and whether that's contacting us, we've got a form on our website that you can sign up to be a host tour, or doing it on your own with your local school. I mean, of course, it doesn't have to go through us. So that's one way for sure. Through volunteering, with the number of initiatives that Ag in the Classroom has. So our food farms are one program. We're always looking for farmers to be involved in those programs. Those are a bit challenging because if you're a grain farmer, the food farms take place in spring and fall. Most grain farmers, they're pretty busy on their own farm. But sometimes there's more of an opportunity for farmers who are maybe involved, in dairy production or beef production to come out during those times. March is a very important month for us. It's Canadian Agriculture Literacy Month. And during that month, it's all across Canada and in Saskatchewan here, we match up teachers and volunteers from the agriculture industry for classroom presentations. And so last year, I think there was about 8,000 students who received a visit from an agriculture industry representative. And one thing I will say is the number of actual farmers who volunteer for Canadian Ag Lit Month is not as high as we would like it to be. But in saying that, we're also happy to have agriculture industry professionals who maybe work with, a crop input company or fertilizer company or sales, because that's a great opportunity also to talk about, the other careers in agriculture. So signing up for Canadian Agriculture Literacy Month, awesome opportunity to get involved. Of course, in the public sphere, just being, be active on social media, tell your story. We do have a campaign that I'm just going to briefly mention now, but it's going to be kicking off in October, which is Agriculture Month, and it's called Acres for Education. And we are inviting farmers to consider making a donation to Agriculture in the Classroom for 10 cents an acre for every acre that they farm. And so not sure what your input costs would be per acre, Terry. Take a wild number. Let's say it's $300 input. Well, maybe it can be $300.10, and that 10 cents goes towards investing in the future of agriculture. So we'll have information about that launching. Because at the end of the day, we do need financial resources to be able to run the programs, develop the educational resources, the digital ones, the learning kits. Holden talked about the tangible, being able to do things. Our most popular resources by far are all of our learning kits. We have a grade 3 soil kit, a grade 11 soil kit. We've got a Saskatchewan seed kit. We've got a food security budgeting game. And they're very expensive because they're kits. And we do the kits with everything contained for the teacher so that even if they don't have any background information, they can run with it and the kids can have a really positive experience. So our Acres for Education campaign is going to be, the goal of the campaign is to be able to replenish our resource library because I think we're low in almost every single kit that we have. So many ways that people in agriculture can get involved. If you're listening to this podcast and, maybe you're not up for having a farm tour, maybe you can consider being part of the campaign. Maybe you've got kids in school, you can consider letting your teacher know about Ag in the Classroom, because it's disappointing, when we have a lot of schools involved in the province. I think last year over 600, but that's not every classroom in every school, right? And so that might be one classroom in a school that maybe has 20 different classrooms if they're an urban classroom. So, letting your teachers know about it is really important. Because when we think about, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what do you want your farm to be like? Who's going to be running your farm? Who are you going to be dealing with to make decisions on your farm? Who's going to be writing the policies for your farm? Who's going to be developing the technology that you need on the farm? Well, it's actually the kids today in the classroom. So, maybe Holden's the future you, Terry, on the farm, but everybody has a future them sitting in the classroom, right? And we need to really consider, what are we doing now to ensure that our future on our farm in the agriculture industry is strong and viable? And it really starts with the kids today.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things I think about a lot is just, again, attracting those outside people from agriculture and what it takes to create that opportunity, but also as a business and as a business and agriculture, learning how to work with people that don't have ag backgrounds and turning that from a challenge into an opportunity. And one thing that's been really a lot of fun for us, and something that's been really successful as well, it is presenting, even though that might put Holden to sleep. But I've had the opportunity to present to a lot of like college, more people that are like went into agronomy field, or but same thing. A lot of times, what I found is uh, teachers and professors are actually like really looking for content and really value like authentic, real, stories or presentations. And so we've done that a lot, and a lot of times we've gotten great summer students or people that have come and joined our business because of us putting us out there, and making a presentation to 30 students, and all of a sudden one or two of them are like, hey, that you look like you got a really cool thing going on there. And we've also, it's a little later stages, but worked with some interns in the past, which we probably weren't very well structured to do that. But we had a student from Germany, a GIS master's student, that had no knowledge of agriculture, come work for us for a summer, and it was a great experience. We learned a lot, and like I said, I think there's a lot to learn from people that don't have any knowledge of agriculture. And yeah, so there's a lot of things that can be done, and if everybody does a little bit, it can make a big difference. So I think definitely, if you're interested in supporting this, it is important for the future of agriculture and our industry and our operations. Look to support some of the programs that you've suggested, and also find ways to become more involved. I know it's there's times where we always think about, yeah, this would be good to do, and I know we've been thinking about doing some of these things, and even having this conversation is kind of re-inspiring some of the energy to take some action, because it's important. It can be a lot of fun. It can be a really cool experience doing some of that stuff too.
Oh, it's so fun. And some of the stories that the volunteers share from their times in the classroom, they're just incredible. I just wanted to touch on something you said, Terry, and that was about finding a way to bring people into agriculture who don't have an agriculture background. And I think looking at the diversity that currently exists in the agriculture industry, at least in Saskatchewan, I think there's a huge opportunity to really grow the people that are in the industry. And if we want to encourage, and welcome, make all people feel welcome in the agriculture industry, it'll be easier to do that if there's representation within agriculture, so that someone can see themselves working in agriculture. And the benefits, I think, to whether it's a farmer or an agribusiness, is the diversity of perspectives that comes in with that, and that knowledge, and the ability to maybe do things a little bit differently. I mean, I think your farm is just a tremendous example of innovation. And that happened because probably there was multiple perspectives and voices in the decisions to diversify the way that you have and to innovate. And so I really want to, I guess, challenge the agriculture industry. This is maybe beyond education, but to say, who do you want to be a part of agriculture's future? And is it only, I guess, people who have the background and look like we do? Or is there opportunity to engage a wider range of people to become a part of our agriculture industry? Because when I'm working in schools that have, the minority is the Caucasian population, who've been here, then we need to think about how we shift the way we do things as well. And maybe in rural Saskatchewan that isn't as prevalent, but certainly as more newcomers come into our province, we want to welcome them. And I think that we need them to be a part of agriculture.
Absolutely. I mean, either way you look at it, farm backgrounds, rural roots backgrounds is by far a large majority of the population, and is shrinking all the time. And we are in an industry that is serving essentially all the humans on the planet's needs in some form or fashion or another, and we need to be looking at that in a broader sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's just such an exciting time to be in agriculture when you look at all of the innovations that are taking place, and people do care about their food. That is one thing that I've noticed. I mean, and maybe it has to do with the rise in social media and the information, whether it's true or not, about food. But people want to make good decisions around the food that they're buying, and that connects to how the food is grown, and there's so much misunderstanding around that. And that's, we don't talk about that. We haven't talked about that a lot. It's been a lot more maybe on the production focus, but the food choices and the knowledge of food and empowering people to make good food choices and not to be scared of food, or the food production practices, that that's a really important part of what we do as well. And that matters because how farmers are growing their food is increasingly coming under scrutiny from society.
Absolutely, and that's something I agree with fully as well. We are entering a different area of information and technology and knowledge, and the consumer looking for more transparency. Whether they understand all the things or not. If we don't start doing a better job of telling and sharing that story, and being transparent and open, already, some of our biggest risks are the influence of policy and what we're allowed to do or not to do, which is largely being dictated and decided by a huge part of the population that doesn't maybe have all of that understanding. And so we also have the opportunity now with tools and technology to tell a better story, and to share. For me, a lot of this is celebrating and sharing the success of agriculture, the amazing opportunities. We've really worked hard. I really believe, myself personally, it's what I love to do, but agriculture is just such an amazing place to be. And there's so many different opportunities and so many different levels. And the one thing that's so exciting to me is it's always changing. There's always something new. And it's kind of a beef in my bee in my bonnet that, we're not doing a better job of attracting that younger generation, attracting the youth and people to agriculture and all the amazing opportunities because of some of these old mindsets. And that's something that needs to change.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Holden a question, if I could, on that. Like Holden, how would you change peers, colleagues, their views on agriculture? Like what would you do to help young people? Let's say maybe not in Langenberg, like let's say in a Regina school, to um, make them think that agriculture is a really cool industry and an important place to be.
I think what I do is I would show them more of the technology side than the equipment wrench slinging dirt work side, because I mean I don't personally know, I've never grown up in the city, but I know people that do, and they just hate wanting to put on work boots and go out into the field and get covered in chaff or whatever. But they have to realize that that's not what farming is. It could be, or agriculture is. It could be so many other things. Like they could sit in an office all day and they could send emails if they wanted to, and they could be involved in agriculture, or they could fly drones and download software and send it to some farm in Ontario, and they could be involved in agriculture. But they just they just have to look past that. Oh, if you're in agriculture, you're a farmer that wakes up at 5 a.m. and doesn't go to bed till 11 and just works in the field all day. Like,
That's awesome.
You don't do that, do you, Holden?
no, no, never.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you talked about earlier, just the technology side, like a lot of what Holden was describing, like in my role in the farm now, I'm not in the field nearly as much. And I check all the weather stations on my phone. I can open up an app and see all the telemetrics of where the equipment is and what field they're in and what the yield is instantly. And the amount of technologies, it is like a video game. It is amazing. And a large part of the population and even the youth don't see that. And I think that is something that we need to highlight more, that the technology side of things, and the science and innovation, because there is some incredibly cool, exciting stuff, and I think stuff that would be much more exciting to larger population, versus the traditional. Probably 80% of them think of, yeah, they got to wake up in the morning, put their work boots on, and slave till 11 o'clock at night, in the field, which is not the reality of um, today's farm operations for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that the amount of careers and the you know the diversity of careers is tremendous. I mean, thinking that I was talking with you know the your person Jamie who helped organize the podcast. I'm like, well, she's working in agriculture and her job has nothing to do with the farm, right? And so whether somebody's interest and skill set, is more artistic or more in the communication lens or the science or the analytics, or they actually want to get their hands dirty and build, like there really is a place for you in agriculture. And our responsibility is to find a way to inspire students to see that and to want to be a part of that, because they're like, this industry is so important. It's feeding the world, it's fueling the world, it's clothing the world, it's working to create the balance and the harmony with the environment so that we are sustainable as a planet and we have these food systems that are robust and they're healthy. I want to be a part of that, and yeah, I love to just talk to people and I'm super artistic, but I can still be in this industry and my career is going to matter. So that's, yeah, that's part of it. I think it's a really big challenge, but I prefer to think about it as it's a really amazing opportunity that we at Ag in the Classroom have together with people in agriculture to really drive the future of agriculture to this incredible place.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I appreciate so much your passion and your energy around this subject, and appreciate so much you taking the time with us today on the podcast to share some of this. For those listening, and all those out there that are inspired by some of the messaging in the story, let's just reiterate again, like where can they reach out to learn more, and what are some things they could do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can be reached at our website, aitc.sk.ca, Agriculture in the Classroom for short. So aitc.sk.ca has our website has all of our contact information, all of our programs. We've got social media channels on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So at AITCSK, you can follow us there. That's a really easy way to see just sort of what's up and coming, ways to get involved, amplify our message, like, follow, share, comment, all of those great things on social media. Volunteer, sign up on our website to volunteer for us. Really consider the investment from your farm for our Acres for Education campaign. Really encourage that to happen. We are a registered charity, and so any donation made to us is a charitable donation. And if you've got any other ideas on how to get involved, just feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to have a conversation about that. Even if it's something that you're planning just in your local community, but maybe you want a little bit of idea on how to get it rolling or insight, we're happy to share that with you, because the more that the agriculture industry gets involved, the greater the impact will be and the more change that will happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's a great call to action for all those out there that want to invest in the future of agriculture and the future of their businesses and farms, and get involved. No more boring PowerPoint presentations that I'll do for the school to put Holden and all his friends asleep. And yeah, take some action to see how you can get involved, and have a bit of fun. And I just also want to, have a bit of a shout out to, I know there's hundreds and hundreds of people and farms out there, teachers, organizations that have made great efforts and done a lot of work to help share these stories and engage our youth and children in agriculture. So kudos to all you guys. Thanks so much, Sara, for taking the time for us today, and hopefully yeah, good luck with your championing your cause moving forward, and hopefully we can continue to get the support that we need in these areas.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Holden, and good luck with harvest in your area. I know that it's gearing up and it's going to be a busy time. So, yeah, hoping all goes well and have a safe harvest for sure.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care.